Nobody has more respect for women than I do. Nobody.
Hillary Clinton wants to abolish it, believe me. She wants to abolish our Second Amendment.
I think they didn't deny it. I don't think anybody denied it.
Other presidents did not call. They'd write letters, and some presidents didn't do anything.
Many people have come out and said I'm right.
You really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Hello and welcome to Fallacious Trump, the podcast where we use the insane ramblings of Timu Hitler to explain logical fallacies. I'm your host, Jim.
I'm your other host, Mark. A logical fallacy is an error in reasoning that results in bad or invalid arguments. And the logical fallacy we're looking at this week is the Golden Hammer Fallacy, also known as the law of the instrument. I like that. Timo Hitler's good because there have been lots of people that have been described as pound shop Trump.
Yeah.
So to have him described as Timo Hitler.
Yeah, he's not like a quality Hitler. He's just...
No, he's the kind of Hitler, kind of Mussolini you get off Wish.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's a Timo Hitler. Because he looks, you kind of think, oh yeah, I'll get that because it's only 15 cents. And then it arrives and you go, oh yeah, I know why it's only 15 cents
this
now.
is falling apart already.
Yeah, that's right. It's not even real, it's just printed on.
It can't even make the trains run on time.
Yeah. Yes.
So, the Golden Hammer Fallacy, also known as law of the instrument. The reason it's called law of the instrument is that it comes from Maslow's writings. Sometimes it's called Maslow's hammer. He was the one who wrote, if you only have a hammer, then you tend to see every problem as a nail. Yeah. That's what this fallacy is. It is the assumption that you can use the same solution to solve every problem.
That's basically the entire character of Jeremy Clarkson in anything that he's in.
I mean, certainly, literally, any time he needs to fix anything, he will often hit it with a hammer. That is his go-to tool.
Whilst using the phrases speed and power and how hard can it be?
Yeah. So our first Trump example is a collection of clips demonstrating him using a single tool to try and solve multiple problems.
They're leaving us, going to Mexico, right across the border, building a plant and selling things back into our country. You can't let them do that. That's what tariffs are for. We're trying to balance the budget immediately, and because of the tariff income, which is really, it's already turned out to be amazing, actually.
If you don't want to cut entitlements and you do want to add to defense spending and you want to eliminate taxes on tips and you want to make the 2017 tax cuts permanent, that's a lot of money.
But we're going to take in tremendous amounts of money on tariffs.
I used tariffs to get the deal because if they weren't willing to make a deal, as an example, Mexico or Canada, then I would have used tariffs.
Remember when I had remain in Mexico? In other words, nobody could come into our country. They had to remain in Mexico. You think that was easy to get? And I got it. I got it because of tariffs. Drugs are pouring in at levels never seen before, 10 times what we had. They're just pouring in. We can't have open borders. And I said to the president of Mexico and to Justin Trudeau, if it doesn't stop, I'm going to put tariffs on your country at about 25%.
We talked about China, and that tariff is in place. You've said tariff is a beautiful word.
Well, that's just a small portion of it. I just did the China having to do with what's happening with fentanyl. That was a penalty to China because they're sending massive numbers. I mean, numbers like we've never seen before. We stop wars with tariffs. I mean, I had cases where I told a country they were being very aggressive with another country. It had nothing to do with us. I just don't like seeing dead people, okay? And they were going to go to war. And I said, if you go to war, and they do a lot of business with the United States, I'm putting 100% tariff on everything you do, any business you do with us. No, this has nothing to do. I said, it does have. I stopped a war. Will I get Nobel Prizes? Never.
Because that's what's really important. Yeah, so...
Yeah, of course.
The tariffs...
He just uses it for everything.
That he doesn't understand.
Yeah.
He still doesn't know who pays the tariffs. Yeah, he has cited them as a useful tool to combat illegal immigration, drugs coming into the US to be used as a punishment for drugs having previously come into the US, as a negotiating tactic, as a way to raise money to pay for other things, as a way to balance the budget and pay for the deficit, and also apparently stopping wars. He could do that all with tariffs.
So if he did understand how they worked, then they wouldn't generate lots of money when he slaps the tariffs on things.
Yeah, that's not how that works. But then he doesn't slap the tariffs on the things
because the people that he's going to tariff agreed to do what he wants them to do, and which they were about to do.
We'll see, because we've got this week. It's Liberation Day on the 2nd of April, where he's definitely going to do the tariffs that he promised he was going to do.
Okay.
He hasn't actually made clear what tariffs on what countries, on what products, or what amounts will be happening on Wednesday.
and how that will bring about liberation.
Yeah.
And for who?
No, absolutely. Liberate your wallet from having money in it.
Day. Yes. Yeah. Because that's what's going to happen, because that's how it works. Have we talked about that theory? I have this theory that I've stolen from somebody else, that if he wanted to raise certain amounts of money or put more money into certain budgets, he'd have to put that through Congress. If he raises tariffs, then that just becomes money and it doesn't go through Congress. So he could just give that for tax breaks or whatever.
I mean, that's not how any of that works either.
Right.
Because it's still, it doesn't, it still goes through the Treasury.
Something of a conspiracy theory.
Because it's essentially a tax. That's what it is. When you buy a car, some of the money that you pay for the car goes to the person you're buying the car from, and some of that money goes to the government in exactly the same way as sales tax.
Yes, and if they didn't put that on, then you would pay sales tax anyway.
I mean, you're also paying the sales tax.
Yes, yeah.
It's another tax. It comes out of the pockets of the consumers at
Because
the
it's
most
charged
charitable.
to the manufacturers or the importers.
At our most charitable, we could say that there may be some countries, some industries, where they will lower their prices to importers to encourage them to continue importing their goods rather than buying stuff in the US.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence that happens.
Right.
All of the evidence is that the prices go up for the consumer.
Prices just go up.
And in fact, it goes up not just on the tariffed products, because when he put a tariff on washing machines in his first term, the companies that were selling washing machines in the US found
also
that
put it on
they would charge, they had to charge
and
more
cookers.
for foreign washing machines, like Samsung washing machines and things like that.
Yeah.
So they could get away with charging more for American washing machines because there was such a disparity, price disparity now, that they could charge a bit more for American ones, and people would still buy the American ones because they were still a bit cheaper. And also, while they were selling washing machines, they could put a bit of money on the dryers as well. So, it puts prices up because people can use it to gouge.
Which, as we know, is a very Trump thing to have done.
Yeah.
Because we know about Trump management that did that.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And he thinks that nobody would do that?
He thinks he's come up with this thing that other people haven't thought of, and it can be used to solve any problem.
Any problem at all. Yeah. Rather than taking it from history that actually that's why customs unions and free trade agreements were put in place in order to do away with that.
And also why there was, at the point at which he claims the US just had so much money it didn't know what to do with it and was forming committees to figure out what to do with all the excess money.
Yeah.
At that point, they switched to an income tax-based system because the tariff system wasn't working.
It
wasn't doing what they needed it
enough.
to do. It was generating plenty of money, but it wasn't enacting their isolationist policies and stopping people from importing. It wasn't increasing manufacturing in the US and doing the things that they were trying to use it to do, which is the things that he says he's trying to use it to do. It was taking money out of the pockets of regular Americans and putting it into the Treasury, where, they already had plenty. That's the issue. Yeah, you can pay the deficit by taxing people enormously. Like, say, billionaires. That'd be a good way to do that. But instead, when things are tariffed, it's based on stuff that people buy rather than stuff people earn. Yeah. And the thing about billionaires is they don't buy billions of pounds worth of stuff every year. They just make that amount of money. So they aren't putting that money back into the economy. They're saving it and they're investing it in the stock market and stuff like that.
Then they say, well, we can't pay any tax on anything because we don't actually own any of the shares. That's all based on futures. It's all tied up until you want to buy something, say, like Twitter, and then you can borrow money on the basis that you're worth the amount that you can't be taxed on because it's all tied up in futures.
But the middle class and working class people are getting taxed on their income, and then they're also using almost all of the remaining income to buy stuff, which will now be more expensive because of the tariffs. So it's those people that are getting taxed by this system. It's not the rich people.
Meanwhile, it's stopping wars and other shit that it isn't doing. Yeah.
So our second example in Trump world comes from Dr. Oz, who is the incoming head of Medicare and Medicaid. But this is in his former role as TV-based quack.
Hi, I'm Dr. Oz. Interested in acupuncture? This traditional therapy has been around for over 5,000 years. And these days there's growing evidence that it can help with conditions ranging from lower back pain to migraines. It may even offer relief from seasonal allergies. And best of all, there are very few side effects, so it can't hurt to give it a try.
Sure, that's just some of the things it absolutely doesn't help you with. But
seasonal allergies, right?
Yeah, there's acupuncture, and this kind of is standing in for all alternative medicine, because one of the things that you find with lots of different alternative medicines, going back all the way to when it was patent medicines,
right,
is that they'll solve anything. They'll cure so many different things that if there was an actual biological and chemical mechanism happening in your body, there's no way it could possibly do all of those things. Those aren't linked.
Because it would just get confused. It's like it is snake oil stuff.
I mean, it just doesn't. It would need to be something that has a plausible mechanism for how it could actually do those things. But when you invent a mechanism like chi, the flow of energy around the body and stuff like that, or when you claim, as people who do emotional freedom tapping technique say, that actually disease and illness is caused by blocked trauma. That's what happens. And so you need to release the trauma and then you can cure all of your diseases. Or when you claim, like reflexology does, that by massaging feet you can reach all of the different parts of the body, because somehow mystically different parts of the feet are connected to your heart and lungs and ears and brain and nose and everything. So just by touching your feet you can cure all of the things that might be wrong with you.
Sounds a bit like astrology.
So if you invent a thing that somehow connects every possible disease you could have to one thing, then you can solve all of the diseases with that one thing. But with actual medicine, typically...
because the one thing is medicine. With science.
With actual medicine, it is typically more targeted. There are medicines which have side effects often. They will be prescribed for one thing and may benefit while you're doing it something else, and therefore they're either prescribed for multiple things or they're prescribed off book for some things. But that's sometimes a chemical side effect of its primary purpose. It's not usually something that has been designed to work in multiple ways for multiple different diseases.
For your feet, your nails, and your mind.
There's an explanation for that chemically and how that, there's a mechanism for how that works. Instead of just going...
rather than...
acupuncture seems to work basically as well as it does for headaches on everything else we try it on. Which not really at all.
Which could range from, but there's when they put from or up to. Like when you get up to 100% effective. Well, like 2 is on the way, is legitimately in that range. Well, you get so distracted by the needle being stuck into you that you forget about your headache.
And now is the time, I think, for Mark's British politics corner.
It's apt and appropriate and apposite that we use Boris's voice there, because it seems to me that the ultimate golden hammer of recent times that was going to fix everything and actually just ended up smashing things to pieces. And like all cowboy builders, the perpetrators fled with our money, and we're trying vainly to pursue them through the small claims court whilst living in a drafty, leaking, miserable hovel, was this.
Then we can get on and enjoy the benefits of a Brexit, which means Brexit.
Using these new powers, this recaptured sovereignty.
The British people have their sovereignty back. And like those anti-Corn Law campaigners, the British people should now have the right to do away with protectionism and have cheaper food from around the world. This is the promise of Brexit.
Take back control of huge sums of money, £350 million a week, and spend it on our priorities, such as the NHS.
We could have cheaper food, clothing and footwear straight away.
Have cheaper food, cheaper shoes, cheaper bras.
Controlling immigration, or creating free ports, or liberating our fishing industry, or doing free trade deals, making our laws and rules for the benefit of the people of this country.
We'll strike deals on economics, on trade, and on border control, which suit us.
The reason we had the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe was because we'd come out of the EU.
Brexit is what we make of it. Freedom, democracy, and the ability to reach out to the rest of the world. Brexit was never going to solve any of our domestic problems.
Brexit saved my marriage.
What Brexit does is give the British government the opportunity to do things differently, to make us more competitive, and to make us more global in our outlook, and that includes immigration as well.
French National Front leader Marine Le Pen has said Brexit will trigger a domino effect which will bring down all of Europe.
But she said that as a plus. That wasn't... She wasn't saying that, which is a bad thing. She was like...
Yeah. No, I think all of these were good things.
Yeah.
I think, yes, that's right. Yeah, this was a good thing. It would thrust her to power, and it means that they could do Frexit, and there will be Spexit and Grexit.
Yeah. That was already on the cards.
Yeah. And then the Germans bailed them out. Yeah, so there we go. From bras to marriages. That was Rachel Johnson, by the way. That was Boris's sister. Bras to free ports to vaccines.
Yeah, being able to reach out across the world, like, you know.
Yeah, and be a bit more, have a more global, have a more global viewpoint, and that includes immigration. So that, good old Farage, not one to not have contradictory viewpoints at the same time.
It's the political panacea, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everything was going to be dealt with by Brexit. And strangely, very few of them have come to pass.
I'm shocked.
Yes. I would say that probably Rees-Mogg would blame us for that, because we have not, like the corn laws, when tariffs that were placed on corn and flour, which meant bread was too expensive, there was a revolution or was an uprising, and people took back control, took back the sovereignty of the bread in their mouths. And Rees-Mogg is saying, now that we've got sovereignty, we could demand that. The people could rise up and demand cheap bras.
Basically, he's saying we didn't believe in Brexit hard enough, and that's why it hasn't worked.
Yeah, that's why it's not worked. Yeah, of course. The opposite, Golden Hammer, is probably also true. We rejoin the EU will fix everything. Every shortcoming we're currently suffering will be dealt with by a blow from the rejoining hammer.
It provides an economic boost to a pre-existing economic market, while the dynamism of that allows for a reignition of not just their economies, but the United Kingdom's economy.
Reconnecting Britain must start by reconnecting us with our European neighbours, because the European Union are our biggest trading partners.
Better together in science, where collaboration knows no borders. Better together in security, where unity strengthens our defences against petty tyrants and expansionist dictators. And better together in spirit, where shared challenges are met with shared solutions. My father told me one thing when he was in Brussels as a Eurocrat. In Brussels, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
And so rejoining the EU will give us access. It will boost our economy. It will see off fascist dictators. It will provide shared solutions to shared problems. It will mean that you're not on the menu, you're at the table. Baroness Fox, who I featured last time, also was in that debate, but she's just horrible. So I didn't want to include her at all. And she was saying, actually, rejoining, not going to solve the problems. But her fallacy is that all of the problems that we had in the UK were solved. So it's the first Golden Hammer. The problems that we had were solved by coming out of the EU. So
we don't have any problems
go
anymore.
Back into the EU. So we have
all right. Nothing to solve.
No. Yeah. Except nothing at all. Nothing to say here. Just move on.
I wondered why everything had been so awesome for the last
so great ever
8 years.
Since. Yeah. Absolutely awesome. Yeah. But as for Farage admitted, it was never going to solve our domestic problems. Oh, okay. Thanks. Why didn't you say that back then? You career-minded individual, rather than your beliefs, rather than following your beliefs. was hypocritical, started narcissistical, gazes at himself. Late nights all alone with a puddle. David Cameron starts a referendum, calls him on the phone. Can I give my job to the country and let them vote no? But as he's getting set to remain, a knock comes on the door. Bang, bang, Maslow's golden hammer leaves us all a bit beguiled. Bang, bang, Maslow's golden hammer makes fallacies in the wild. Bang, bang, Maslow's golden hammer leaves us all a bit beguiled. Bang, bang, Maslow's golden hammer makes fallacies in the wild. Golden hammer making fallacies in the wild. Beatles there, of course, with Maxwell's silver hammer.
Had to be, really, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was either that or If I Had a Hammer.
Oh, yeah, but I've done that one before. I did immediately think of that one, and I thought, I think I've done that one. Yeah. But it comes out as Maslow's golden hammer very nicely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in the Fallacy in the Wild, we like to talk about the fallacy of the week from a non-political perspective. And our first example is from Blackadder. And this was really the first one that came to mind when I thought of doing this fallacy, because it's kind of very similar to the Dr. Oz one, but going back into Elizabethan times.
An extraordinary new cure has just been developed for exactly this kind of sordid problem.
It wouldn't have anything to do with leeches, would it?
I had no idea you were a medical man.
I've never had anything you doctors didn't try to cure with leeches. A leech on my ear for earache, a leech on my bottom for constipation.
They're marvellous, aren't they?
Well, the bottom one wasn't. I just sat down and squashed it.
You know, the leech comes to us on the highest authority.
Yes, I'd heard that. Dr. Hoffman of Stuttgart, isn't it?
That's right, the great Hoffman.
Owner of the largest leech farm in Europe.
Yes. Well, I can't spend all day gossiping. I'm a busy man. As far as this case is concerned, I've now had time to think it over, and I can strongly recommend a course of leeches.
Yeah. That's weirdly prescient of alternative therapies these days, and how
there you go.
That's all they've got. It was balancing your humours at one point and leeches.
Yeah.
Those were the two things they had to work from. And of course, bleeding medically and, using leeches for that, it was essentially a method of balancing your humours if there was
yes, because if you're a bit too sanguine, they would get some of your sanguine out.
So it's really all just part of one thing. When you don't have other methods, everything it seems, can be solved with the one method you
prescription.
do have.
Strange enough. Yeah, and as the doctors will, they don't get sued by their clients that are dead. So
absolutely,
they're not around to tell you that it didn't work.
Yeah. So our second example is from 30 Rock.
Yay!
And this is running up to the Obama-Mitt Romney election, and Jack is meeting with people from Mitt Romney's campaign in his office in front of a big pile of money.
My brother, Dad, which is Mormon for Dad, has more money than he knows what to do with.
With all due respect, Garrett, I don't think that's a thing.
Well, it's just at this point in the campaign, for us, it's more about ideas than cash.
Garrett, I would slap you if I didn't know you were going to get your own planet when you die. And until your father has 100% of the vote, I think we can still make a difference. I mean, look how poorly we're polling with African Americans.
Jack, there's no amount of money that could...
How dare you talk that way in front of the pile? There is no problem in the world that can't be solved by throwing money at it.
Yeah, that's Jack's approach. Money solves everything. If you've got a problem, just more money.
Just throw
more
money
is
at it.
needed. That's
yeah.
And then, in this episode, spoilers, he is proven wrong almost immediately, because the way that he plans to throw money at it is to get Don Cheadle to do an ad for Mitt Romney by paying him an enormous amount of money. And Don kind of struggles through saying that he prefers Mitt Romney to Obama. And then when he shows it to Tracy's bodyguards, who are his kind of focus group for black people, they're not convinced. They didn't think that Don Cheadle made a particularly compelling point. So our final example is from the IT crowd. And this is a very quick one, because this is what Roy says every single time he picks up the phone at the IT help desk.
Hello, IT. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
I mean, to be fair, it does solve quite a lot of IT problems.
Yeah.
So, as solutions go, it's not a terrible one.
Pretty good. Yes, it's almost a panacea.
It almost, I mean, the fact that he says it immediately before he even finds out what the problem is, I think puts it more into the realm of fallacy. But honestly, I mean, one of the main answers, I would say, is an answer you get from IT people after they've had a bit of a go and nothing's worked. It's not usually the first thing they do. They'll kind of have a bit of play and
try and work out what it is that's going on.
But if the things they push don't do anything, then they'll go, have you tried rebooting? Tried turning it off and on again?
Well, there's a reason for that. Having worked in, I'm not having it, that you're running down the IT.
I'm not.
Having worked in IT.
It's a noble profession.
It's more to do with PCs than the Macs, I would say, because a PC tends to be made up of lots of different manufacturers' parts, which are all fighting for the order in which they get utilized. So if you were to switch the whole thing off and switch it back on again, it would load them up in the right order.
It is a way of resolving some conflict.
That happens with a Mac
it does
as well.
Absolutely happen with a Mac. On my Mac, I have to force quit
as
regularly as I do have to turn off and turn on again my PC. So my
early experience with the turn off and on again thing was putting in extra hardware, which was all made by various other people, whereas Mac don't do that.
Yeah,
well, that's why they're so expensive, because you're buying the
all Apple stuff.
Them testing stuff. And guaranteeing that it all works. But sure, because if you plug in lots of peripherals that are all supposed to work, they're all supposed to work. Because I'm running, I run 3 monitors. And you have several external hard disks, because Mac's hard disks are still stupidly small.
Yeah.
And then at some point, the Mac just goes, well, I don't know what's going on. I said, well, it was perfectly fine yesterday. And then you have, not only do you not have to just switch it off and on again, you have to switch it off and unplug everything and then switch it back on and then plug them in individually until you find the one that's gone wrong.
That's more of a kind of troubleshooting thing if switching it off and on again doesn't work. The thing I've never been able to get to work ever is printers. I've never had a printer that reliably prints. It just fucking doesn't. It's going back to the old days where where the printer is right next to the PC and it's plugged in with a cable, like a parallel cable. And the PC says cannot find printer, and I'm like, it's fucking right there. And going right through to kind of wireless printers where it's just, it will do it like one time in 4, and then it doesn't, and then 2 days later it starts printing the email that you wanted to print, and they're like, what the fuck? Why now?
Why are you doing it now? Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I've got it now. Yeah. And we thought it was tough just trying to print a pound sign. That was the kind of bet noir, wasn't it? So I think actually the equivalent of, have you tried switching it off and on again, built into Windows is the troubleshooter. And whenever you've got something going on,
troubleshooter's pretty shit in Windows, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it will come up at the bottom. Run troubleshooter. Yeah. It's a bit like, I see you're having a problem. Do you want me to run the troubleshooter?
It looks like you're writing a letter.
Exactly. It's the little paperclip guy again. Yeah, and you run the troubleshooter and you go, no, can't fix it. Yeah. Try switching it off and on again.
So we're gonna play fake news, folks. I love the game. It's a great game. I understand the game as well as anybody.
Yes, it's time for Fake News, the game where I read out 3 Trump quotes, 2 of which are real and 1 I made up, and Mark has to figure out which one is fake news.
So what we need to implement is some kind of referee who would conduct a fairness inquiry, only an inquiry into the fairness of the conducting of the score system would guarantee the conduct of the referee and any inquiries they make into the score system. Conduct any further inquiries to the scores of referring conductors.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's the only way we'll get it.
It's the only way.
Yeah.
So our theme this week is fertilization. Because, because why not? Because he's talked about fertilization a few times now, and it has come time to address that.
We've got to talk about it. Come time in your life, young man,
because it's
talk about
fertilization is among the perks that women as a whole get out of the Trump presidency. I don't know if you're aware of this.
Oh, okay.
But as far as Trump sees it, it's like it's one of the main things. So
because prior to that,
no one was getting fertilized.
No one was getting fertilized. There was infertility everywhere. Yeah.
So statement number 1: we're going to have tremendous goodies in the bag for women too. The women, between the fertilization and all of the other things that we're talking about, it's going to be great. We're joined today. Fertilization. I'm still very proud of it. I don't care. I'll be known as the fertilization president, and that's okay. That's not bad. I've been called much worse. Actually, I like it, right? I like it.
What the fuck? Tremendous goodies in the bag. The women, between the fertilization and all of the other things we're talking about.
Not just fertilization, obviously.
No, but everything between there and the other stuff, from there, from that one end to the other end of all the other things we're talking about. Yeah. It's going to be great. Yeah.
So statement number 2.
Yeah.
I'm like the father of IVF. When I heard about it, and they had a bad ruling in Alabama, a judge ruled that all clinics have to be immediately closed. And I was called by Katie Britt, great senator from Alabama, and she said, "You have no idea, so many women, they're going crazy." And I said, "Explain it, just explain it." And after about 5 minutes, I said, "Well, we can do that. That's great. That's helping us to have beautiful, healthy babies. That's okay." And I actually said, I wrote something out, and it was quite good, I must say. And it was totally supportive. And Alabama legislature the following day passed exactly what I wrote.
Of course they did. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And statement number 3.
Explain it. Yeah.
But Kamala is crazy and a liar. Hillary lied, but Kamala is something else. She said, I want to ban IVF, that I'm not for IVF, which is the lying. I'm more for IVF than anyone. It's fertilization. We've taken it away from Democrats, if anything. I came out in favour as soon as I learned about it, which I understood it very quickly. And on behalf of the whole Republican Party, I said, we want fertilization. What we want, actually, is for the insurance companies to pay for the whole thing. And I think we can do that. I really think we can make that happen.
On behalf of the whole Republican Party, we want fertilization. Okay. Well, yes. So in terms of just sheer bulk, 1 is smaller than 2 and 3.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't know why I said that. It's just.
If you're going by volume, is what you're going by.
Just
then.
Volume alone. Volume alone. I'm going by volume. Why not? Yeah. Anders will be doing exactly the same thing. Yeah. So the thing about, I understood it very quickly as soon as I learned about it, because I don't think he would admit to not knowing anything to that point, but that might make it more real. So I'm the father of IVF is too good a gag to be true. I wrote something out and then they read it. Okay, so on that basis, I'm going to surprise myself and quite quickly say number 2 is the one you made up.
Okay. So of the other 2, which are you more convinced by?
Number 1.
Okay. And number
tremendous
1.
Goodies in the bag. Yeah.
Is real.
We're going to have tremendous goodies in the bag for women, too. The women, between the fertilization and all of the other things that we're talking about, it's going to be great. We're joined today... fertilization. I'm still very proud of it. I don't care. I'll be known as the fertilization president. That's okay. That's not bad. That's not bad. I've been called much worse. Actually, I like it, right? I like it.
Yeah.
It's like Tony Blair at the WI.
Well, this was a thing that he held at the White House for Women's History Month. So it was a room full of women that he was presenting this to. And, I mean, God knows what parts of this were written down, but somewhere in the speech, they were like, okay, like, this is Women's History Month. I'm the president at the White House. Obviously, I should talk about all the good things my administration is doing for women. So the best way to phrase that is, we're going to have tremendous goodies in the bag for women between fertilization and all the other things.
I mean, it's... what? Just him saying he's not George Clooney, is he? So him standing up and saying fertilization is not going to make people giggle.
I mean, I'm shocked people weren't throwing up, like, on camera.
Exactly. Exactly. Going, and he's just, what? Who is it? Who are they? Why are they laughing?
I mean, they're obviously
just because they can't believe
Trump
it.
supporters. They wouldn't, you know,
people obviously drunk.
I think everyone else has learned enough that they wouldn't attend a thing at the White House.
Yeah.
So
yes, there is that. There is that. Yes. Yes. It's a kind of self-selecting thing. Yeah. Oh, dear,
so,
oh, Lord.
You also think that number 3 is real.
Mm-hmm.
And number 3...
Yes.
...is fake news.
Ah, nice. I knew it was, because...
You should have said.
I know. I'm going to have a word with myself later on. I came out in favour as soon as I learned about it. That was the thing that jarred. So why would he... Because he wouldn't admit to learning about something that he didn't know about. He would just know about it.
Well,
which
actually,
made me think, yeah.
This was one of those ones where there were probably 5 or 6 times he's talked about this that I was having trouble choosing between for the 2 real ones, because they were all batshit in various different ways.
Yeah.
Well, another time he talked about Katie Britt. We'll play the number 2 in a minute, because obviously that was real. Another time he talked about Katie Britt coming to him about this. He called her just a fantastically attractive person. Like, she's a fucking senator, dude. Like,
exactly. And
what would that have to do with anything?
Exactly.
Like,
she's another person.
Yeah.
She's you can't. What?
Anyway.
Well, this is the guy who did say, you know, if I wasn't her father, I'd be dating her.
Yeah. But he did in that one also say that he basically said, explain IVF to me. And 2 minutes later, he fully understood it all.
Yeah, of course,
so,
yeah. In a kind of Matrix kind of way.
So he kind of did.
I know IVF.
Yeah. So not far away from calling himself the father of IVF, he was saying, basically, I didn't know anything about it at all. I've had a 2-minute crash course, and now I am the father of IVF.
I'm the expert.
So number 2 was.
Oh my God! So he did say that.
He actually said that.
Oh no!
Yeah.
I'm like the father of IVF. When I heard about it, they had a bad ruling in Alabama. A judge ruled that all clinics have to be immediately closed. And I was called by Katie Britt, great senator from Alabama. And she said, you have no idea. So many women, they're going crazy. And I said, explain it. Just explain it. And after about 5 minutes, I said, well, we can't do that. That's great. That's helping us to have beautiful, healthy babies. That's okay. And I actually said, I wrote something out, and it was quite good, I must say, and it was totally supportive. And Alabama legislature the following day passed exactly what I wrote.
So,
did he though?
Well, there's quite a lot in there that isn't true.
Right. Not least being the father of IVF.
Well, yeah.
That was Steptoe. That was a guy called Steptoe who was given an honor. Peter, Stephen, something like that.
Okay.
Who was given a honorary doctorate the year I graduated at university from my university.
Right.
So that's how I know. Patrick Steptoe.
Right. So he's not. He claims to be the father of IVF because he saved it basically by making this statement. Because this bad ruling in Alabama, we talked about that actually in episode 143, because there was a case in Mobile, Alabama, where someone got into where they keep the frozen ones in a fertility clinic and dropped 3 test tubes from cold burns on their hands. The parents who had deposited those potential babies wanted to sue the clinic, and the Supreme Court of Alabama ruled that frozen embryos are children. Same thing.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That was batshit at the time.
Right.
And the thing
Yeah.
that happened pretty immediately was, he says a judge ruled that all clinics have to be immediately closed. That absolutely didn't happen. The judge ruled embryos are children. So all the IVF clinics in Alabama went, I mean, in that case, we've got children in liquid nitrogen, and that's probably against the law. So we're going to stop doing that immediately in case we get put in prison.
Yeah. Or we're going to ask a question.
No, they just stopped. They stopped. They stopped doing business. All the clinics, basically, most of the IVF clinics in Alabama went, well, with that ruling on the books, we cannot continue to do our work. This is insane.
Yeah.
Because it naturally involves doing things with embryos that you would be legally not allowed to do with children, including getting rid of ones you don't need anymore.
Or just keeping them in a very small glass tube, for one thing.
So even Republicans went, I mean, that's mad. What you've just said, that embryos are children. I know we constantly say embryos are children, but we didn't mean like that.
Yeah.
Because we like IVF, because rich people do IVF.
Yeah, rich, white.
So, immediately, this was February 16th of 2024, this ruling came down.
Yeah.
The Democrats in the Alabama legislature pretty much immediately put through a bill saying, we're going to make it a law that frozen embryos aren't children. Because obviously they're not. That's crazy.
Not least because we use a different word for them.
Yeah, the Republicans in the Alabama legislature went, hold on a minute, let's not go that far. And they announced a bill saying, while embryos are children, it doesn't count in an IVF setting. So, like, if you're doing IVF stuff, you're still allowed to do the things you need to do IVF.
But come to trying to get an abortion in Alabama, then
you can't
that's
do that.
when we'll...
Because embryos are children.
Yeah.
So, Trump's story is that he wrote out something quite good and totally supportive, and the next day the Alabama legislature passed exactly what I wrote. He said, here's what he wrote. It was a Truth Social post. It wasn't, because he wasn't president. This was 2024. So it couldn't be like an executive order or anything. So he just wrote a post on his shitty social platform. He said, under my leadership, the Republican Party will always support the creation of strong, thriving, healthy American families. We want to make it easier for mothers and fathers to have babies, not harder. That includes supporting the availability of fertility treatments like IVF in every state in America. Like the overwhelming majority, because that's in all caps, of Americans, including the vast majority of Republicans, conservative Christians, and pro-life Americans, I strongly support the availability of IVF for couples who are trying to have a precious baby. Today, I am calling on the Alabama legislature to act quickly to find an immediate solution to preserve the availability of IVF in Alabama. The Republican Party should always be on the side of the miracle of life, on the side of mothers, fathers, and their beautiful babies. IVF is an important part of that, and our great Republican Party will always be with you in your quest to the ultimate joy in life. So, if the Alabama legislature had passed exactly what he wrote, that would be completely meaningless.
Legally binding.
That would not do anything.
You
can't pass a social media post as a law
with a whole bunch of aspirational all caps. Yeah.
So, needless to say, that's not what happened. The day before he posted this, even the Republicans in the Alabama legislature had said, we're putting forward a bill to make this okay again. It took 2 weeks after that before they passed a thing, and the thing they passed was to say, doesn't count if it's IVF.
Yeah.
So the IVF clinics started up again. It didn't have anything to do with him. He didn't do anything. The lawmakers did a thing.
Yeah, because he wasn't in charge of
He wasn't in charge of shit.
The law.
He was,
he was
barely in charge of
individual.
his golf game at that point.
He's never been in charge of his golf game. So when he says, I'm like the father of IVF, so you're nothing like the father of IVF, unless, you're going to wear horn-rimmed glasses and be an Englishman.
He's not like the dodgy cousin who occasionally babysits of IVF.
Right.
He's not connected to it.
He's the intolerable stepfather of IVF that we don't like to talk about, and there's some kind of restraining order on him so he can't come within 5 miles of IVF. That's what he's like.
I think at best he's the estranged racist grandfather of IVF.
Yeah, who you get a dodgy cartoon Christmas card from that's in dubious taste. Yeah. Signed, I'm the fertilization president. Oh, fuck off, will you?
Yeah.
Inappropriate grandfather of IVF.
So we have got a few social contestants.
Right, who've been driven just as mad as I have. Yeah.
Tim the Enchanter on Discord says, well, it's got to be number one. Number one is too crazy to be made up, but goodies in the bag for women just should not exist. So I'm making it the fake if it's not already.
Yeah, no, good thinking. Yes, yeah.
Andrew says, the fact that two of those are true means we, USA here, lose. Rolling a die to guess that number 3 is fake.
There you go.
On Facebook,
yeah.
Jerome says, they all sound so batshit they could all be fake, but since it's Trump, they could all be real. But since Mark has to guess only one is fake, it's only logical that one is fake. Logic.
Ah, fake good. Yeah. Ooh. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know what? That's like, we should be employing that. Yeah. Who is number 1? You are number 6. Yeah.
Andrew on Facebook says, I think number 3 is fake news. Trump usually wants other people to pay for stuff, so this could be a bluff. Maybe he'll get Mexico to pay for IVF.
Yeah.
Ben says, I think that I've heard 2 and 3, so with Jim, that means one of them is made up, so the fake news is number 3.
Oh, very good.
Led you to the right answer.
Like that. Yeah. Yes.
And on Patreon, One-Eyed Nick says, every time the orangu tyrant talks about fertilization, I want to vomit until I'm sterile. Number 1, I remember him saying. Number 3, I think I remember 2. Number 2, he definitely talked about Katie Britt, but I think he was more interested in how attractive he finds her. Good call, Nick. Yeah, he did do that, but that was a different time than her explaining anything to him, so I'm saying number 2 is fake news. Stephen Bickle says, I'm going with number 2. It's got a lot of things he said, but it feels like someone used a grammar tool to make it more coherent than his usual. Also, the following day is a tad eloquent for him. I'm not sure he understands cause and effect, so something following something else is probably beyond his grasp.
No, I think he's exactly no, but he misunderstands
it. He did it the day after they announced they were doing a thing. So
yeah. But he also misunderstands causality. Just because something happens after he has done something else, he thinks he's the cause of that other thing happening. Yeah.
So Catherine Wolfe says, first timer here, going for number 2 because he said something about being the father of IVF, but who the fuck knows?
Yeah, quite. Yeah, I'm with you, yes.
Will said, number 1 is made up. I don't know anymore. I've stopped following politics for the most part out of sheer depression of the felonious orange shit given winning again. I think I've heard him say something along the lines of numbers 2 and 3, but who knows anymore?
So we've had a shit gibbon and a
orangu
tyrant, which is just such a brilliantly bad portmanteau word, but I'm going to use it from now on. That is great.
And finally, Renee Z says, I almost vomited when I started reading number 1. However, I think it's real. I've heard him refer to himself as the father of IVF, so I think number 2 is real. That leaves number 1 as fake news. But I've heard him saying he will have insurance companies pay for IVF. Alas, I'm sticking with number 3 as fake news. Now I'm going to throw up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes, I must take note of all of those reaching number 3 as the verdict for future reference. But
absolutely.
Father IVF. Jeez.
To be honest, because I had the fertilization president and the father of IVF in 1 and 2, I was trying to think of what can I get him to call himself? Like what sobriquet can I get him to imagine for number 3? I couldn't come up with anything as mad as those two things. So I thought I'll just go without.
But I like that on behalf of the whole Republican Party, I said we want fertilization. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm doing the double think on your behalf, thinking, right, no, not so much for me. Oh, man.
And it's time for the part of the show that this week at least is called Texting Attack Plans to Journalists is Not a Logical Fallacy.
Jesus Christ.
Because just when you thought they couldn't get any more incompetent.
I mean,
Wow.
I know. What's interesting is the contrast of the behaviour of the journalists who got inadvertently invited to join a Signal group, he was very kind of old school about it. He said, "Oh yeah, no, this stuff's happened," and then he didn't release the actual chunk of
Not
stuff.
at first,
When he talked about it, he was saying, "Oh yeah, well I got invited and I got insight into attacks on the things that were planned, hours before they happened. I shan't tell you what they were."
Yeah. Because of like national security and stuff.
Yeah. So
he
he's
had
actually
a lot more
being-
respect for the secrets than they did.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this just
A lot
in
more
case,
adult, yeah.
in case you haven't
you've
heard
been
the
on a
story.
different planet. Yeah.
This is Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor of The Atlantic magazine,
Mhm.
who was added to a Signal chat that was talking about attack plans on Houthis in Yemen.
Yep.
He was added by Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor, but the chat was for a thing called the Houthi Small Group, and they were talking about what they were going to do in terms of essentially bombing the Houthis. And on the chat were people like Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, the Director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, Mike Waltz, the NSA.
Vance, wasn't Vance on there as
Yeah,
well?
Vance was on there as well. And this journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg, who... When
We just
he was
sat
added...
there and watched it all.
Yeah, well, when he was added initially, he first of all, he got a message from Mike Waltz, essentially, through Signal.
Yeah.
Kind of saying, like a message request thing, which he answered because he's met Mike Waltz before. He's a journalist. This guy's a politician. And they went, yeah, okay, maybe he wants to tell me something. Whatever.
Just go, yeah.
He got put into this group. When they started talking about things that they were going to do, he thought, well, this is obviously a hoax. There isn't any way possible that the Defense Department have been this incompetent and have like included a journalist on this stuff, and then they're talking about this stuff over Signal. Because apart from anything else, attack plans, war plans is what he used in his headline when he wrote about it in The Atlantic. And it's been a big thing by Pete Hegseth and Caroline Leavitt and people on the right saying it wasn't war plans. It was just attack
schedules
plans.
for an attack.
It was just as if that makes it good. As if that's okay then.
To put top secret stuff and then latterly, did we not find out that some of the people in the group were in Russia?
Yep, some people were in Russia, and they shouldn't be talking about any of this stuff on a thing like Signal. It's a supposedly encrypted platform, end-to-end encryption like WhatsApp.
Yeah,
you shouldn't use WhatsApp to talk about these kinds of things. Where they talk about these kinds of things is in specific facilities called SCIFs. Sensitive compartmented information facilities, and you're not even allowed to take your phone into a SCIF. Because they're sensitive. It's secret shit.
Yeah, it's secret stuff, about bombing people and shit. Yeah.
So that's where they do this kind of chat about making plans for when they're going to send fighters and bombers and missiles to places and drones and things. Is they do it in a sensitive area where it's not going to be leaked in any way. It's not going to get out. There's no way that they can be intercepted in any way. But
much less invite journalists in.
They were using Signal on their phones. Their phones are not necessarily secure. Some of them, as you say, were in foreign countries. One of them was in Russia. And we know that their phones are not secure because Mike Waltz has Venmo. And much like Matt Gaetz and other people, for some reason, his Venmo is public. It wasn't like a kind of... He hadn't got the settings to make sure it was all private. And through Venmo, he had connections to lots of other government officials. And so lots of their details, their email addresses, in some cases passwords and things like that, are out there on the internet. Probably, in some cases, for the phones on which they were making attack plans. So that's one of the many reasons you shouldn't use Signal to make attack plans. But if you're going to do it, and don't do it. But if you're going to do it, don't invite a journalist to the chat.
The group. Yeah, because what that is complete opposite of having a skiff to which you don't invite people that are going to leak it. The reason you have a skiff is to not leak these plans. Inviting a journalist into the chat is the opposite of that.
Yeah. At first, he did think it was a hoax. He thought he was being scammed because he thought this is crazy. And or maybe that it was like the Trump administration trying to kind of sucker him into putting out false information. Like maybe it was he was being used as a patsy or being entrapped.
As a false flag.
Because then he can say, look, fake news, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But then they gave specific information about times that things would happen.
Yep. And then they did.
And then they happened at or around those times, at which point he was like, okay, so this is definitely real.
Hang on a minute. Yeah. Yep.
And basically he stayed on and kind of took screenshots and paid attention until the attack was over, and then he left the group. Yeah. And when you leave a group on Signal, much as when you leave a group on WhatsApp or whatever, it tells people. But they didn't then go. They didn't get in touch with them and go,
shit.
Who the fuck's Jeffrey Goldberg? Why was he in the group? And what are we going to do about stopping this information from being made public?
Getting out.
No, they didn't do anything.
No.
So he published a story called "The Trump Administration Accidentally Texted Me Its War Plans," and as you say, he didn't put out the more sensitive information. He said what had happened. He said that he had seen kind of times and information that he shouldn't have seen, and that it was, obviously incompetent, and it's a bad look for the Defense Department. The people on Trump's side, Hegseth and Carolyn Leavitt and people involved, and including Mike Waltz, said for the next couple of days, it wasn't more plans, there was nothing sensitive, it wasn't top secret, it wasn't classified, it's all just blowing up over nothing. Also, they pointed out how Jeffrey Goldberg is like not a fan of Trump. Like he's a Democrat, and he reported on the Russia hoax and stuff like that before, which I don't think makes it better. I think if you're going to include a journalist in your war planning, make it a friendly one.
Yeah. Well, except that their friendly journalist is the Secretary of Defense.
That's true. Yeah.
I
mean, I expect he knows some people at Fox and Friends who don't hate him, though. Maybe
Tucker Carlson.
No, not Tucker.
No,
he would definitely hate Pete Hegseth.
Yeah,
but people like I don't know, Steve Doocy, maybe. I don't know. Someone there probably he could reach out to if he wanted a journalist on the chat. I don't think he did.
Yeah. No.
No. And the thing is, having said this is, it was fine. It was nothing. We didn't even talk about anything really. It was we were just making, organising a barbecue. Then Jeffrey Goldberg put out another piece where he then actually put, here are the attack plans that the Trump advisors shared on Signal.
I was shouting at me about standing and shouting, and they're going, he's just making it up. He fucking hates us. Of course he would say that. He went, okay. Here they are. Here's the entire thing with all the emojis and everything, and the fuck yeah, America, rock kind of things happening.
So this is direct from Pete Hegseth on the chat. Yeah. He says, time now 11:44 ET. Weather is favourable. Just confirmed with CENTCOM we are a go for mission launch. 12:15 ET. F-18's launch first strike package. 13:45. Trigger-based F-18 first strike window starts. Target terrorist is at his known location, so should be on time. Also, strike drones launch, and so on. And he goes through several more specific times and things that they're expecting to happen with the designations of planes or missiles or bombs, the sea-based Tomahawks,
absolute time stamps and and success.
That was before these things. This was the plan. This wasn't like here's the things that we've already done, the things that have happened so far. This was before, because it said current time 11:44, and he was talking about stuff that was happening for the next 4 hours, essentially. That seems bad, because if that were to be intercepted, by someone other than the journalist who had more respect for national secrets than the Secretary of Defense, then the enemy could have made different plans, gone different places, or taken action to attack those F-18s, for example, which they now knew exactly where they were going to be and when.
Where they'd be and what they were doing, yes.
The other thing that Pete Hegseth follows up that text with is more to follow per timeline. We are currently clean on OPSEC. OPSEC is operational security. So one of the texts that he sent to the journalist was, nobody knows about this. This is a completely secure operation.
Yeah. Oh, you'd be so tempted to put a thumbs up in from, with the Atlantic logo absolutely. Right next to it. Yeah.
Or just go, are you sure?
That's how you go. Right. Yeah.
But then, as you said, the emojis started. After it seemed like things were going well in Yemen, there's, Jesus Christ, Michael Waltz, who's a grown man, he replied.
Is he though?
Yeah. I mean, physically. he replied with a fist bump emoji, an American flag, and fire.
Yeah. He's just navigated the whole objects and flags bit of... I'm surprised none of them put their avatar up there. That's what we should do, is make avatars of them all. Yeah. And like put it up with them going, that lean in one where it goes 100% or, big thumbs up.
So, I mean, it's kind of amazing that this happened. Well, I say that.
Not that
it's amazing if you step back to like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But given the people that Trump has put in these positions, it's not surprising at all.
No.
Because they're not serious people.
That's the amazing thing, that is we're looking at this and going, they've just like shoved this on the equivalent of WhatsApp.
This is actually exactly what you would expect from these people.
Yeah.
I mean, Giuliani pioneered butt dialing reporters while committing crimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
and we're also a bit jaded by it because we've had sight of all of the WhatsApp groups from the COVID and Partygate stuff over here. And you kind of think, that's just what they do. But we're no less alarmed that it gives you an insight into the fact that they are complete amateurs and arseholes having these conversations when you get to see the content of the conversation. But then the fact that they have been leaked.
Yeah.
They are just... They're doing knowing that this stuff isn't secure.
Assuming Mike Waltz didn't intend to add Jeffrey Goldberg to this chat.
Yeah.
It's not a deliberate leak. In the first Trump presidency, there were a lot of deliberate leaks.
The equivalent of blink twice for help.
In a very early episode about Sarah Huckabee Sanders calling the whole of the press corps together and yelling at them about the leaks that were coming out of the White House. And then the next line was something like, according to 6 people who were in the meeting. And so there was a lot of leaking from the first Trump administration. And that, I think, was partly because they didn't purge people who weren't all for Trump. They didn't get rid of everyone who might not be all in.
Yeah.
And this time, they're only hiring loyalists. So I think there's been a lot less leakage.
Right.
And, but you get something like this just through sheer incompetence. Yeah. And the other thing about the Signal chat and the fact that they're using Signal is not just that it's a kind of a not fully secure, even though it's a like secure messaging, technically, it's kind of consumer level secure messaging.
Yeah.
But the other thing about Signal is you can set messages to disappear. And on this chat, we can see from the header that messages are set to disappear in 1 week from this chat. And that is a thing that the government is not allowed to do because government communication has to be kept. Has to be given to the National Archives.
Yeah.
And so whether they were using Signal because it's convenient and they just don't care, or because they actually don't want all of this stuff preserved. And if they'd used a SCIF, if they'd used the actual secure fucking messaging system that is set up exactly for this kind of thing,
purpose,
then all of that would have been preserved and would have gone into the National Archive. And maybe they wouldn't have wanted those emoji responses or the just dunking on Europe. Like JD Vance's first his problem with this whole thing isn't the fact that, well, his first problem is that he doesn't think Trump knows what he's doing with it. That was like he was saying, I'm not sure Trump understands basically the impact of this. And I think, was it Pete Hegseth who said, well, you're welcome to talk to him about that. Like I fully support you raising this with POTUS.
That's it.
And so Vance said, I think it's fine, actually fine. Yeah, if you think we should do it, let's do it.
Let's just do it. Let's just go ahead.
His problem with doing it wasn't the fact that they were going to be killing people, or that they were doing this over Signal, or that they'd included
a journalist to look at it.
It was that it would help Europe.
Yeah, because they're fed up with bailing Europe out. Yeah.
To which Hegseth replied, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic. So that's the thing that might have made them not do this stuff of attacking people. And I don't know, maybe there being collateral damage, maybe, risking the lives of the people who were doing the mission, because that's always a risk. Especially if you fucking tell people you're going to do it 4 hours in advance.
4 hours in advance of it.
But they did. That wasn't a thing that concerned them about it. It was the fact that Europe might get some benefit if they did this. And they're fucking freeloaders.
And that's why they're going to extraordinary lengths to say that it was an error with Signal. It wasn't us.
Trump was saying, Signal, I'm not sure Signal works that well. Well, we don't fucking use it for this then.
It was Snoop Dogg that did it, wasn't me. They're just
Shaggy.
doing it. It's Shaggy. It's plainly, we've seen it. We've seen that, not only is the journalist reporting what he said, he's just showing the screenshots of the stuff. Here it is. This is what they bloody did. That's how we could see the emojis. You can't write the emojis out. We've seen the stuff there. And yet the fact that this stuff is in plain view for all of us to see, they're trying their hardest to the whole thing. God, I hate Tulsi Gabbard. And because he was saying, this in the inquiry that was called hastily, of course. And they're saying, okay, so why were you doing this on Signal? And she's going, it wasn't war plans. They were this, and it wasn't classified stuff being shared. And then the guy who's chairing or asking some questions at the inquiry is saying, well, if it's not classified, share what it was. You can tell us. If it's unclassified, you can tell us. You can't have it both ways. And she was just sitting there with a melon streak in her hair, just saying, I can't share that because it wasn't classified. I'm not going to tell you, but all I can tell you is that it's not classified. Well, then you can tell me. You can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and deny it.
Thing is, we know that Trump can unclassify stuff with his brain.
With his mind.
So maybe it's classified when a Democrat wants to look at it, but it's unclassified all the rest of the time.
Or a journalist.
A journalist. That's fine. That's not classified.
It's not classified. And it's not a war plan, because when it's unclassified, it's just an attack plan that isn't going to affect anybody, even though the words are exactly the same as something that would affect somebody. The moment that I was kind of holding on to in my hope that it will all end in tears, that the Project 2025 won't get enacted, a bit like Dominic Cummings' destruction, Bonfire of the Vanities, destruction of his Guy Fawkes moment, ended up being thwarted because Boris was an idiot and a narcissist and just fired him because his then wife told him to, and because Cummings was getting too many of the headlines and all that stuff. The thing is that with this, so I was holding on to that, thinking that the Project 2025 thing won't get enacted because it will just fall apart because of Trump's narcissism. But he's not going to fire these fuckers because they're all
so
yes
far.
men.
Yeah, he's hasn't gone quite as far as saying I fully stand by or whatever.
I have every confidence.
He hasn't done that.
But
he has said he doesn't. He's not going to fire anyone. And the thing is, in the first administration, we had a thing towards the second half of the administration. We had a thing called the fire swamp, where we competed. We chose members of the cabinet, like a kind of fantasy football type team, for who was going to get fired, and lots of people got fired. So it was very entertaining. I'm not sure it's worth doing, because if someone doesn't get fired for this, how is anyone going to do enough to get chucked out? I mean, it's going to be stuff they say that is anti-Trump. That'll happen.
It can only be that. You're not the father of Jeff. Turns out.
I would have expected Pete Hegseth to go for this, and probably Mike Waltz, but I don't think it's going to happen. Maybe we'll see, because there's still time. You never know.
Still time. We're only 20 minutes past whatever they were saying. It's not even a week yet.
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah. And finally, some things we really don't have time to talk about.
I'm really not sure what drives Trump's apparent belief that vaccines cause autism. If I had to guess, it's a combination of his extreme gullibility, his total disinterest in whether things are true, and the political capital he gains by appealing to conspiracy theorists. Former Brainworm host and current head of the Department of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., clearly feels the same way, despite lying repeatedly about it in his confirmation hearings. But his belief is a more educated one. He's read the studies and has made a conscious decision to only accept the findings of the poorly run, discredited and sometimes retracted ones that support his preconceived belief. If he's aware of the extensive, international, sometimes decades-long studies that show there's no link, he's determined to ignore them and pretend the jury is still out. At Trump's direction, RFK has been tasked with studying the non-existent link, which has the anti-vax crowd all excited. They ask the rest of us, the ones who believe in science, why we have a problem with that. If there's no link, we should be happy to have it confirmed by this study. If it hadn't already been confirmed multiple times by multiple studies, none of which convinced the RFKs of the world, maybe they'd have a point. But even then, the most important thing would be to make sure this study is as reliable as possible. A large sample size, transparent methodology agreed and published in advance, appropriate blinding and controls, and experienced qualified researchers free of any conflicts of interest. It's early days, of course, so we don't know about all that other stuff, but the work has apparently been assigned to a researcher called David Geyer. Geyer's worked in this field before with his father Mark, who was a doctor. I say was, not because he's dead, but because he's had his medical licence suspended for endangering kids with autism by promoting unproven and potentially harmful therapies that combined puberty blockers with chelation therapy based on the theory that mercury in vaccines causes autism. On the plus side, David never had his medical licence suspended, but that's largely because he's not a doctor. A fact not lost on the Maryland State Medical Board when they disciplined him for practising medicine without a licence.
Oh my God.
David and his dad have published multiple studies together claiming to show a link between thimerosal and autism, despite the fact thimerosal hasn't been used in childhood vaccines in the US since 2001. And at least a couple of their studies have been retracted. The most ironic one being a study purporting to show conflicts of interest in the wide range of papers that dismiss the vaccine autism link, which was withdrawn for undisclosed conflicts of interest. One of those might be the fact that David and Mark own shares in a company that develops treatments for mercury intoxication.
Yeah.
As Alison Singer, president of the Autism Science Foundation, noted, it seems the goal of this administration is to prove that vaccines cause autism even though they don't.
I always look forward to the White House Easter egg roll. It's a throwback to simpler, more wholesome times, the kind of thing that would appeal to the old-timey values of the GOP, surely. The egg roll, which began during the Rutherford B. Hayes administration in 1878, it's long been privately funded without taxpayer dollars, largely through the American Egg Board, which also provides tens of thousands of eggs for the occasion, a show of good faith on the part of the company to demonstrate their support for tradition and healthy eating. And so what if there's a little of "don't forget to buy your eggs from us, they're great" going on? Well, Ever since it became a used car lot for EVs, Trump's White House is determined to get in on the egg-rolling action. This is an enterprise. This is not your grandmother's Easter egg roll where people lined up outside the gate and go and roll an egg and get a little gift bag and walk out, said a former official involved in planning the event. Oh, no. There's a pitch document laying out sponsorship opportunities, which include logos for both the White House and Harbinger, which previously produced the event during President Trump's first term. Amongst the offerings for prospective sponsors, naming rights for key areas or elements, sponsor logos featured on event signage, custom branded baskets, snacks/beverages or souvenirs, mentions in official event communications and social media posts, acknowledgement in printed or digital event programs, and inclusion in press releases and media interviews. Sponsors can also gain access to an invite-only brunch hosted inside the White House by floaters, tickets to the event, and a private White House tour. Richard Painter, who ran George W. Bush's council office, told CNN, "That would have been vetoed in about 30 seconds in my day," he said. "We're not running this like a football stadium where you get all logos all over the place for kicking in money." Donald Sherman, the chief counsel and executive director of Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, added, "I understand that there are corporate sponsors for the Easter egg roll. What I've not seen before is a sort of outright solicitation and use of the imprimatur of the White House to give corporate sponsorship." Yeah, well, look at what yellow-haired, orange-faced Easter bunnies in charge of the hen house. And what did we get aerated about in England? Cadbury's dropping the word Easter from the Cadbury egg hunt.
While the vast majority of Trump's picks for department heads and cabinet posts have been waved through by an entirely spine-free Republican Senate majority, last week he withdrew his nomination of Elise Stefanik for UN ambassador. She'd already been through a confirmation hearing and seemed likely to get bipartisan support, but her appointment would leave her House seat in New York's 21st Congressional District open until a special election later in the year. The razor-thin GOP majority in the House was cited as the reason for pulling the nomination, with the fact that Stefanik is essentially prepared to vote however Trump tells her being a distinct advantage. The reality is that at 218 to 213, they could have coped for a few months without her. But Trump and Musk's actions so far have been so incredibly unpopular, they may actually be concerned about who would win that special election if it were to take place, which seems crazy since she won by 24% in November.
Wow.
Maybe it's not that crazy, though, because there's a special election coming up within 24 hours of this episode coming out in Florida's 6th District. The seat used to belong to currently embarrassed National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who won the 2024 election by 33 points. And while recent polling shows the Republican candidate is still likely to win, the votes are within the poll's margin of error. So if you live in Florida 6th, get out there and vote for Democrat Josh Weil, because flipping that seat would and should scare the fuck out of Republicans who think their seats are safe.
In a continuing effort to show just how bad a service Denmark is providing to the nationals of Greenland, US officials went door-to-door in Greenland's capital of Nuuk, looking for residents who wanted to greet the Second Lady, Usha Vance. She's got to be a better draw than makeup model Vance himself, surely. Indeed, her office had announced earlier that she would attend the National Dog Sled Race and visit historical sites over several days. Apparently, she'd planned to meet with locals in Nuuk as well, except no one was interested. Well, perhaps they'd come on National Hair Washing Day, because everyone seemed utterly unavailable, even threatening them with Vance himself hosting a Max Factor party in each of their living rooms didn't work. Suddenly, the itinerary was scaled back drastically. The Vances then jointly visited the US Space Force base at Pituvik, which is more than 900 miles away from the capital. Perhaps everyone from Nuuk had gone there. Or Vance wanted to meet Steve Carroll and John Malkovich. Either way, that's just going to make Trump and the Veep even more angry. Come all this way to Greenland and can't find no one that's not glad to be there, except the poor US schmucks forced into exile at Space Force. As Caesar once said about Britain, remind me why we're annexing this godforsaken place again.
If Trump has mixed up the definition of ally and enemy, it sure would explain how he's treating all the countries who used to have a good relationship with the US. Somewhat put out by his constant attacks, many people who had previously considered travelling to the US on vacation are making other plans. I wasn't intending to visit during the Trump administration, but based on their current immigration procedures, if I was, I don't think I'd even be allowed in. According to Le Monde, a French researcher travelling to a conference near Houston was denied entry to the US because the researcher's phone contained exchanges with colleagues and friends in which he expressed a personal opinion on the Trump administration's research policy. I must admit, if pressed, that I have occasionally expressed my own personal opinions about Trump, and my phone is just one of the places you can find them. So I think I'll be staying home for now. Fortunately, the French researcher was simply sent back to France, which makes me suspect he might be white. If he was, let's say, off-white, then the destination might have been a notoriously violent El Salvadoran prison, especially if he had any tattoos. Doesn't matter what the tattoo is, could be a soccer logo, could be representing autism awareness. If you're brown and inked, then Trump's DHS is pretty sure you're in a gang, and therefore are not entitled to any due process whatsoever. Of course, even being a fully legal permanent US resident and being white might not save you. 34-year-old Boston resident Fabian Schmidt travelled to Germany for a week to visit family, and on returning home to the US, found that the green card he'd held since 2008 had been flagged due to a dismissed marijuana charge in 2015. So naturally, ICE detained him and subjected him to violent interrogation, which ended up sending him to hospital. Yeah, I think I'll wait another few years before heading to a GAM live show stateside.
Yeah, sorry, fellas. We ain't risking it. Yeah, you're welcome to come here and do it. Nothing says top secret in a spy movie or a political drama more than when the hero is not able to say anything to anyone, not their family, not even their spouses. Indeed, some of the best dramatic tension comes from that very deliberate lack of communication in a relationship where communication is a cherished indicator of the fidelity of each party. The depths of trust, anguish and doubt are played out for the delight of the viewer and to the agony of the characters, especially in what appear to be true-to-life episodes featuring military conflict and defence of the realm and so on. Yeah, fuck all that. If your former not Fox News presenter turned Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth, not content with chatting war shit on a Signal group, why not just bring your wife along to work? Especially if she's former Fox and Friends producer Jennifer Rauschit Hegseth. Bring her to at least 2 meetings with foreign military counterparts during which sensitive information was discussed, as reported by the Wall Street Journal, at NATO headquarters in Brussels, no less, where Allied defence officials discussed the war in Ukraine, and at the Pentagon with the UK's 2 top defence officials. Okay, we get that Pete's probably a bit nervous, having never been involved in any sort of government role whatsoever in his life before, and this may explain why Hegseth's little brother has been tagging along too, but in a more official capacity. Former podcast producer Phil Hegseth has joined the Pentagon as senior advisor to the Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security and liaison officer to the Defense Department. Hey, there's hope for us to make a similarly mighty leap someday too, I guess. And no, it's not normal for a Defense Secretary's brother to get a senior-level Pentagon gig. It's also against federal law for government officials to hire, promote or recommend their relatives for a job underneath them. No, it's possible they'll just avoid breaking that law if Phil is only considered a DHS employee. Pete Hegseth, incidentally, is currently overseeing an effort to fire as many as 76,000 members of the Pentagon's civilian workforce, who are all other people's family members. Pictures have also emerged of an Islamophobic tattoo Hegseth's got on his arm, though it seems highly unlikely that will matter to anyone in the White House. And Pentagon's officials also told CNN this week that Hegseth, as Defense Secretary, is indeed coming across as a superficial former television personality who's out of his depth. He's a TV personality, one of the sources said. A general officer makes a recommendation and he's like, yeah, go to it. Former Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin would never be like, yeah, go do it. He'd be like, yeah, we'll take that under consideration.
Minnesota State Senator Justin Eichhorn is really trying to get Trump's attention, and he's been doing his homework on how to get into Trump's good books in the hope, presumably, of a coveted job in the administration or a lucrative ambassadorship. Are ambassadorships lucrative? I'm not sure. I've always assumed they're mostly paid in Ferrero Rocher. Anyway, it all came to a head one Monday last month for Justin, who realised the most important thing is comically obsequious flattery that only someone with an ego the size of a planet could be taken in by. The kind of thing that any normal person would assume you were just taking the piss. So Justin introduced a bill into his state's legislature to propose including Trump derangement syndrome as a form of mental illness. The bill defined TDS as the acute onset of paranoia in otherwise normal persons that is in reaction to the policies and presidencies of President Donald J. Trump, which is already weird. I don't know why he pluralized presidency.
Presidency? Yeah.
Anyway, it continued, symptoms may include Trump-induced general hysteria, which produces an inability to distinguish between legitimate policy differences and signs of psychic pathology in President Donald J. Trump's behaviour.
No.
Job done, you might think, but you're forgetting that Trump comes up against that level of sycophantic toadying on a daily basis and barely even notices it anymore. Have you seen the kind of stuff Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says about him? No. Justin needed something else to really stand out, so he did his research and he figured out exactly the kind of people Trump loves to hang around with. Matt Gaetz, Roy Moore, Jeffrey Epstein. So the very same day his TDS bill was filed, Justin went and got himself arrested for soliciting a minor for sex. The good news is that there was no actual 17-year-old prostitute involved in the story, and Justin had in fact been exchanging messages with an undercover police officer. If all goes to plan, Trump will pardon him and probably put him in charge of children's services or something. You know, I feel like Justin and people like him are evil fucks who should go to prison. But maybe that's just my Trump derangement syndrome talking.
There you go. Rubbish is piling up in the streets of Birmingham as council workers strike over pay. Pay the city council says it doesn't have. The government is reportedly monitoring the situation closely. I wonder if they're monitoring the last time this happened, when Labour Prime Minister James Callaghan oversaw the so-called winter of discontent in 1978-79, when rubbish piled up around Eros in Piccadilly Circus and led to the election of Margaret Thatcher and 16 years of Tory rule. To offset that and remind everyone that it's fine, you don't need to vote the Tories back in, you've got us, Labour Chancellor Rachel Reeves is cutting welfare support for the disabled and long-term sick by $5 billion in order to apparently continue to fill the $22 billion black hole left by the Tories, and possibly the $5 billion black hole left by upping the defence budget. At some stage, Labour, you are A, going to have to admit that it's your economy now and no longer the other lots, and 2, tax the frickin' rich and not pensions or savings or all of the other things we had to hold on to while suffering under 14 years of cutbacks from the previous lot of heartless bastards. The problem seems to lie with the optics. I'm sure there are lists of great things that Labour are doing. Well, I know, because I get sent them. But if they have an eye on the next election, which would explain the squandering of a massive majority by doing timid baby step things instead of a huge Bevan invent the NHS-sized things, they don't appear to be cutting through. The optics are not being handled well. Indeed, Matthew Doyle, who worked for Tony Blair and was brought in as Sir Keir's communications director 4 years ago, has resigned. And the Labour Growth Group think tank has told MPs they need to be on YouTube and TikTok. Chris Curtis, the Labour MP for Milton Keynes and co-chair of the LGG, said, "The centre-left of politics has up till now failed to effectively establish a foothold in the online media ecosystem, and we know we've got to change that. Right now we are simply seeding the ground whilst algorithms mainline misogynistic and far-right content." And we thought the only rubbish was piling up on the streets of Birmingham.
So that's all the bad arguments and faulty reasoning we have time for this week. You'll find the show notes at fallacioustrump.com, and if you hear Trump say something stupid and want to ask if it's a fallacy, our contact details are on the contact page.
If you think we've used a fallacy ourselves, let us know. And if you've had a good time, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, or simply tell one other person in person about how much they'd like our podcast. And you can support the show at patreon.com/ftrump. Just like our newest patron, Catherine Wolfe, our strawman level patron, Chuck Gray, Mike Smith, LT, Colleen Lyla, Richard Thunder Hopkins, Will M, Scott, Mark Reich, and Abba Buchanan, who told us when we met her at QED we could just call her Amber. And last year at QED I met the listener, recognised her at QED the year before because we keep using her full name all the time. And our true Scotsman level patrons, Renee Z, Melissa Sytek, Stephen Bickle, Janet Uetta, Andrew Houck, and our top patron, Kaz Tui. Welcome aboard for you, Catherine, and thank you everybody else for your continued support. It's very, very much appreciated.
You can connect with those awesome people as well as us and other listeners in the Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/fallacioustrump or in the Discord at fallacioustrump.com/discord.
All music is by The Outburst and was used with permission, so until next time on Fallacious Trump, we'll leave the last word to the Donald.
That's right. Go home to mommy. Bye. Bye.